Did you enjoy your break? We will now begin Track-B1 of Edtech Korea Forum 2020. COVID-19 has changed our society in a very short time. And in the education field, there has been many changes. So now we are carrying out untact communication. And I believe that COVID-19 has sped up the changes and transition to future education. And we have been making many new approaches and changes in the past 5 months. And so through online classes, we are designing new classes and operating these classes and carrying out assessment as well. So in this session, which is titled COVID-19, the Record of Innovation and the Transition to the Future Education, we will be listening to 3 presenters. The first presenter is Professor Fernando REIMERS, and the title of his talk will be Educating Global Citizens in an Era of Uncertainty. Professor REIMERS is Dean of the International Education Policy Master's Program, and also he serves as Director of the Global Education Innovation Initiative. And because of the time difference, he has sent us a pre-recording of his presentation. So let's now watch the video.
My name is Fernando REIMERS, and I am delighted to join you at this very important forum on the role of technology and educational innovation to sustain educational opportunity during the COVID-19 pandemic. Korea has made very important strides in moving fully online as a response to the disruptions caused by the COVID pandemic back in March. I want to suggest that it is especially important to use this opportunity not just to try to rebuild educational opportunity as it existed prior to the pandemic, but to build back better, to address challenges that pre-existed the pandemic and that are very important in terms of preparing students with the capacities that they need to participate civically and economically in the 21st century. I want to suggest that a very important educational purpose to drive that rebuilding, that building back better, is to educate global citizens in an era of uncertainty. So back in March 11 of 2020, COVID-19 hit the Earth the way a meteorite could have done it, upending life as we knew it, causing all kinds of disruptions, not only in the health impact it had on the population, in the lives that it took, in the disruptions that it caused in the families of those who were directly affected health-wise, but also had a huge economic impact, suspending much economic activity and as a result influencing the livelihood of many individuals and the living conditions of many families. In that way, it is as if a meteorite had hit the Earth and caused a huge hole through which all of our aspirations for societal improvement could risk going down that big hole. We know what happened in education. Schools were suspended their activities, and as a result of that, there is justified, very important concern about the impact that such learning loss could have on the careers and the trajectories of students, on their families, on their communities, on their nations. But I would like to suggest that pandemics, events of this sort, have had historically in the past the effect of causing people to rebuild better. An example of that is the case of the pandemic of 1340-some, which hit Italy and in 2 years essentially decimated 1/3 of the population of Italy and had caused much ravage throughout Europe. However, that pandemic, that event, with all the loss that it generated, also began to cause a process of rethinking of the kind of society that people wanted to live in. It generated, paradoxically, some social mobility among families of merchants who became bankers, such as the Medicis, and who used their wealth to stimulate the development of the arts and of very emerging science, in many ways paving the way for the eventual Italian Renaissance. So I'd like to suggest that perhaps the COVID-19 pandemic could also cause us to create the conditions to bring about a renaissance in education and throughout it in our way of life. Now, there is no denying that the impact of this pandemic will be severe. The last issue of the journal Foreign Affairs describes in their lead article that impact as likely to cause multiple financial crises across the world, leading some countries to default on their debt, a contraction in economic activity, a decline in global trade, increased unemployment, a disproportionate impact on the poor, on lower income households, an additional 60 million people pushed into extreme poverty, and an increase in hunger. And all of that coupled with a very slowed down economic recovery. So there is no denying that this is a global calamity that has caused serious disruptions to life. The Secretary General of the UN has appropriately characterized the impact of this pandemic as more than a health crisis, as an economic, a humanitarian, a security, a human rights crisis that has affected individuals, families, and societies, and that has also heightened and highlighted fragilities within and among nations. Secretary General of the UN has said that the response to this pandemic will involve remaking and reimagining the very structures of societies and the ways in which countries cooperate for the common good. Coming out of this crisis will require a whole of society, a whole of government, a whole of the world approach driven by compassion and solidarity. And my remarks are aligned with this vision. I think we should seize this moment to build back better in education, which no doubt is a very ambitious education challenge. Why is it ambitious? Well, let's take a moment to review the educational conditions right before the pandemic. These are data who were collected in the last administration of the PISA survey administered by the OECD. And as many of you know, that survey not only measures the level of knowledge and skills of students in a variety of domains, it also asks them very important questions about how they see themselves and their lives. So for example, one of the questions is, to what extent are you satisfied with your life? And on this chart, you have the percentage of students who are satisfied with their lives. Now this is paradoxical, that at the time when humanity had achieved in many ways the greatest levels of the greatest levels of life expectancy and of well-being, of material well-being, such a high percentage of students are not satisfied with their lives. Look at Korea, for example. Only 3 in 5 students say that they are satisfied with their lives. The situation is not much different in the United States, and so it is for many countries. In the same survey, when students were asked, to what extent have you experienced bullying in school? Very large percentage of students indicate that they actually have experienced bullying in school. In South Korea, it's a relatively smaller percentage, it's nearing 10%, but still, this shouldn't be happening in schools. We didn't invent these institutions to impose any kind of suffering, of violence, physical or psychological, on anyone. The same PISA survey asked students to what extent they believe that their life has a clear meaning or a sense of purpose. And again, very large percentage of students didn't see a purpose to their lives. In South Korea, less than 70% of the students think that their lives have clear meaning or purpose, very close to the average for the OECD, which is to say that more than 1 in 3 students see no purpose for their lives. Now, I think that those of you who look at what it is that schools do and how we teach may not be surprised. I believe that to a great extent the way in which many schools function is not designed to help students to cultivate agency, develop a sense of purpose, develop a sense of self-efficacy, develop the capacity to collaborate with others, solving complex problems. So it is no wonder that some students feel a little bit lost, even though in educational terms they are the most privileged generation in human history. So for example, the TALIS survey asked teachers, another survey conducted by the OECD, how they taught. And what the survey shows is that for the most part, teachers are very good. They report that they do the kinds of things that are teacher-centered. The kinds of things we have known for a long time are good, like presenting a summary of recently learned content when they introduce a lesson, something a very high percentage of teachers do, 80% in South Korea. Or setting clear goals at the beginning of instruction, something that 80% of the teachers do in South Korea. Or explaining to students at the beginning of a lesson what it is that they expect them to do, something that 95% of the teachers in South Korea do. Or explaining to students how a new topic that they're introducing is related to an old topic, something that, again, over 80% of the teachers in South Korea do. However, when it comes to challenging students, to presenting tasks that require high cognitive activation, to presenting problems that don't have an obvious, simple answer, far fewer teachers do that. So, for example, when teachers are asked, do you ever present your students with tasks for which there is no obvious solution? There's very high percentages that said that they set clear goals, they explained what they expected their students to learn, drop significantly. In South Korea, only 40%, less than 40% of the teachers say that they present their students with tasks for which there is no obvious solution. And that percentage is even lower in the case of the United States, under 30%. When teachers are asked, do you give your students tasks that require them to think critically? Slightly over 40%, 45% of the teachers in South Korea say that they do that. When the teachers are asked, do you have your students work in small groups to solve a problem or a task? Only 60% of the teachers say that they do that. When the teachers are asked, do you allow your students to decide how to solve problems? Again, under 50% of the teachers in South Korea do that. Do you require your students to work on a challenge that takes less than a week to complete? Only 1 in 3 teachers in South Korea does that. And so, to some extent, we shouldn't be surprised that so many students have struggled so much during the pandemic, because they lack the capacity to learn independently, the agency, the autonomy, even the curiosity and the sense of purpose to learn on their own. To a great extent, in our desire to support their own learning, we have rendered them very dependent on the day-to-day, on hand-holding from their teachers. And when that hand-holding cannot take place because instruction is disrupted, as it is at this moment, then we have a problem. Then we see very many teachers who disconnect from their students. We see very significant gaps in how various students engage with instruction. So that is one of the challenges that we should be thinking about as we think about deploying technology, as South Korea has done, to sustain education. How do we do that to at the same time address these problems? And they are problems that pre-existed in terms of the kinds of pedagogies that we were deploying and in terms of the kinds of capacities that those pedagogies were helping our students develop. Beginning in the end of March of this year, I've been working with colleagues at the OECD and at the World Bank and at the Organization 100, trying to generate evidence that could be helpful, that could provide some guidance to education authorities at various levels in terms of creating alternative forms of educational continuity during the pandemic. And one of the things that we did, which was very simple back at the end of March, was a survey that we administered through our networks. It was not a systematic sample that we use at all. It was very much a sample of convenience of educators that we could reach in about 100 countries to get a sense of what kind of plans existed to continue education during the pandemic and to get a sense of the kinds of needs that those educators and educational leaders anticipated. And the results were frightening because, for the most part, few countries had any plans back in March, and they all anticipated a tremendous learning loss and a significant increase in equity gaps of all sorts. We repeated that survey. We obtained more information back in May of this year, about 3 months later. And we asked them, how did it go? What have you done? And to my surprise, a lot had gone on. Most places put in place some kind of a strategy of educational continuity. They demonstrated in putting those strategies in place remarkable capacity for innovation, for collaboration, creating multimedia platforms, finding very creative ways to use existing technologies to provide some form of educational continuity. Now, we know relatively little about how well that is working, other than the perceptions that people have. But in terms of actually knowing how is it working for the students, what are they actually learning, Are they learning what is intended? And more importantly, are they learning what will be necessary for the world that they will encounter after this pandemic? We don't know the answers to those questions, but what we do know is that there is great innovation, that there is a lot of communication, that there is a lot of collaboration across all kinds of stakeholders within societies and between societies, and all of that is good. Only good things can come from the spur from the flurry of creativity and innovation that has resulted from this collaboration and from this solidarity. And I'm hoping that this conference, which is another convening designed to promote the exchange of experiences, the asking of hard questions, the stimulation of our collective thinking about how do we build back better, will help us think imaginatively and out of the box about how do we use this opportunity to redouble our efforts to educate global citizens, because the world is going to need global citizens more than ever as we come out of the pandemic, as articulated by the Secretary General of the UN. I want to talk very briefly about a few resources which I have developed to support educators in helping their students gain the capacities they need to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I think represent an audacious, a capacious, an imaginative vision of a world that is inclusive, where everyone belongs, and that is sustainable. A vision that we should not abandon in the face of the challenges caused by this pandemic, but on the contrary, a vision that we should use as a North Star to guide our efforts. So let me say a word about these resources, which I hope are even more relevant at this time. I think that any education effort should begin with a question not of how do we sustain the reality of schools as we knew it, but how do we embrace a new reality, a more ambitious, a more challenging reality in schools that actually equips the students with the capacities, with the knowledge, the dispositions that they need to build a world without poverty, a world without hunger, a world in which there is good health and well-being for all, a world in which there is quality of education for all, where there is gender equality, and so on. The need for that world has never been greater. But that vision is elusive now as we all face, especially the economic impact of this pandemic. Look at the goal for education, goal number 4 in the Sustainable Development Goals. Look at the vision that it articulates. All students gaining the knowledge and the skills that they need to promote sustainable development, including education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of the contribution of culture to sustainable development. Look at an older document, Article 26 in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Look at Section 2 and the vision it develops for why it is that we should be educating students for the full development of the human personality and for the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, to promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and to further the activities of the United Nations and the maintenance of peace. And the reason I think these goals become more relevant now is because some of the disruptions that the pandemic has caused may push us in the opposite direction, may push us in the direction of hunkering down, of minding our own business, of forgetting our neighbors, of forgetting all these global efforts that have constituted the path to development of the last 7.5 decades. And I think it would be a grave mistake to abandon multilateralism and these global efforts to create a world that is sustainable in peace in favor of a world where every nation, every community fends for themselves and ignores the neighbors. I think that we would do that at our peril. The historical record of such isolationism, of such bigoted nationalism has not been good in the past. It tends to lead to conflict. So over the last several years with my team, I have developed these curriculum resources, many of them translated into many different languages and available as open educational resources, aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and with the UN Declaration of Human Rights. The first one, Empowering Global Citizens, is a curriculum that contains 350 units from kindergarten to high school, to support project-based learning designed to develop a range of capacities I'm going to mention. The curriculum 60 Lessons to Improve the World contains 60 lessons. It's a simplified version of the previous curriculum. And the book Learning to Collaborate for the Global Common Good contains 7 different approaches to curriculum development aligned with the SDGs. So what is the World Course? The World Course is built around the following basic principles. It's an outcomes-based curriculum that depends on project-based pedagogies, active learning, where the emphasis is on providing students opportunities to develop not only knowledge but skills and attitudes that engages them in capstones of an extended duration. Notice the contrast with the pedagogies that most teachers say that they do when they say very few of them engage their students in a problem that takes more than a week to complete. This is just the opposite. This curriculum engages students in projects that take a whole year to complete, because these are the kinds of projects and those are the kinds of efforts that we will need if we're going to achieve ambitious goals such as a world without poverty, or a world with gender equality, or a world in which we relate to the environment in a way that is sustainable. So there are coherent themes that help students understand the connection between what happens in school and the world outside of school, that help students discover a sense of purpose bigger than themselves. The units are interdisciplinary. They integrate knowledge across various subject domains. There is new knowledge and content. And the basic goal is to foster agency, initiative, the capacity and the desire to make a difference, leadership. The idea is to help students learn from what works, to develop a growth mindset, a mindset of possibilities, to help them develop innovative and an entrepreneurial spirit, to develop seamless connections between schools and parents and communities. And what a great opportunity this hybrid learning, or this at-home learning that we're having to depend on because of the pandemic, to actually strengthen that collaboration. I believe this is potentially one of the real silver linings of the pandemic, that teachers have gotten to know their students and their parents a lot better, and that parents have gotten to know their teachers and to respect them a lot better. And out of that mutual knowledge and respect, a new form of collaboration can come that can help us produce much powerful, much deeper education. The emphasis of this curriculum is on developing a breadth of skills, both cognitive but also interpersonal and intrapersonal. The Sustainable Development Goals and human rights are the North Star of this curriculum. The curriculum makes many connections between global and local, engaging students with complex, messy issues. It's a curriculum that is age appropriate, but it's not infantilizing. And so one of the artifacts that we use to connect this curriculum with the goals is to name the particular learning outcomes in the following categories: intercultural competency, which includes an interpersonal dimension, an intrapersonal dimension, and an ethical dimension; knowledge and skills, which includes various domains: economics, trade, demography, culture, politics, science, technology, public health, demography, business entrepreneurship, and a series of work and mind habits. And for each one of them, we break them down into rather specific learning objectives that can produce an important consensus among teachers in the same schools and across schools and between them and their teachers, so that there is alignment and there is coherence and shared vision in terms of what it is that schools are trying to do to develop these capacities. So basically we use I think we have about 200 constructs of this sort that are then used to map backwards a curriculum from those learning outcomes to specific learning experiences that students are to have. And that's how we came up with these 350 units. That curriculum has been very well received. It is used in many schools, private and public, around the world. That curriculum is translated in many different languages. And there are a number of elite independent schools that have used that curriculum as a springboard to then develop their own pedagogy and their own curriculum to educate global citizens. But that curriculum is ambitious. It requires a big commitment on the part of schools. The World Course proposes that schools should devote 8 to 10 hours a week every week from kindergarten to high school, and it requires very well educated teachers who can teach domains and subjects and knowledge that is not typically covered in schools. So we develop a simpler version of that curriculum, and that is what is contained in the book Empowering Students to Improve the World in 60 Lessons. What that curriculum contains, what that book contains, are essentially 3 components. One is an explanation of how do we go from the Sustainable Development Goals to naming particular learning outcomes and how do we go from outcomes to lessons, which is what we did in the first book. We do that in this additional book. The second thing that is contained in that book is a protocol to develop a school-wide strategy for global education. And lastly, there is a prototype. There is a curriculum, 5 lessons per grade from the first grade to the last grade of high school. That protocol to create a school-wide strategy of global education is very simple. It consists of 13 steps. Establish a leadership team, have that team develop a long-term vision, have them study the SDGs, have them develop a framework of knowledge, skills, and dispositions, revisit what is currently done in the school, design a prototype, communicate that vision, that framework, and that prototype, develop an implementation plan, identify the resources to carry it out, develop a dashboard to monitor implementation, a communication strategy to make sure that everyone is on board, a professional development strategy to execute and to evaluate, and then do it better the next year and better the next year after that. And what this protocol permits is to make visible the 2 hypotheses that are the foundation, the cornerstone of any good pedagogy. One, the hypothesis that if we engage our students in a certain number of activities, they will gain particular outcomes. And the second, that if they gain those outcomes, those would help them realize the following outcomes for themselves and for their communities. The beauty of making that language visible, of creating a language that makes it possible for teachers to publicly and visibly test these hypotheses, is that we can then make it possible for teachers to collaborate in that enterprise and for schools to collaborate, effectively creating an improvement network. The last resource I want to share is a theory that is contained in this book. It's a framework, a multidimensional framework about how to approach system-level change to educate global citizens. Perhaps an indication that in the middle of this tragic global calamity, there are many people taking the time to ask deep questions about the purpose of education, is the fact that this book, which was published a few weeks after the pandemic had been declared, I think early in April, has been downloaded over 140,000 times. And that signals to me that there are many people asking themselves, how do we educate our students to build back better? What this book contains are 5 perspectives to transform education systems, a language that is designed to make it possible for people to communicate and to collaborate and to develop a theory of mind of what it is that other stakeholders expect of the education system. Those perspectives are cultural, psychological, professional, institutional, and political. And what I argue in this book is that most past efforts of school change, of global education change, have really been superficial because they have focused exclusively on the student experience in the classroom. So they have been efforts about getting teachers to do valuable things, but that don't leave the classroom. And what I think we need to do is we need to go beyond that. We need to transcend the classroom because at the end of the day, innovative work that only remains in the classroom is like putting those post-its on a refrigerator. They can remind us of something, but they may not stand there for very long. What we need to do is to expand the zone of global education, to engage not only an entire department in a school, but the whole school and institution, the whole system. And my hope is that this 5-level framework, this multi-level framework, would make it possible to do that. So what is a cultural perspective? It's understanding the alignment that should exist between what society expects of schools and what schools do. And this relationship is a dialectical relationship. It's a two-way relationship. But it's very important to build explicitly in any change strategy the necessary dialogue, the necessary communication to make sure that societies authorize schools to produce the change they're trying to produce. For example, when they decide to educate their students about climate change. The psychological perspective is about depending on the best available knowledge of how students and teachers learn and using that knowledge. For example, as summarized in these consensus reports developed by the National Research Council of the United States. A professional perspective is about understanding that we have to build the expertise among teachers and school principals if we expect them to do sophisticated things. It's what I discovered when 20,000 people got access of the book Empowering Global Citizens, and many of them said this seems interesting, but not for me. I don't have the skills to teach this subject matter. And this is one of our opportunities at this moment in building back better, to build a robust infrastructure of teacher professional development that would build not just the capacity to teach online, but the capacity to teach differently, the capacity to develop a different breadth of skills, the capacity to engage their students in different pedagogies using technology. An institutional perspective is about understanding that an education system is just that. It's a set of interlocking components, elements that need to be in alignment with one another. How good is it to change the curriculum if the standards of admission to universities do not change? How good is it to change the curriculum if we don't create the opportunities to help teachers gain the capacities to teach the new curriculum? A political perspective is understanding that the very many stakeholders that really have to collaborate in education, each of them brings the best of themselves, including their views, their hopes, their aspirations for what a good society is. And it's very important to take the time to listen to those perspectives, to develop empathy, and to negotiate a proposal for change that builds a big tent where many people that can hold the aspirations of very many different stakeholders. And so my hope is that these instruments that I have proposed, these 4 books, these 3 curriculum, and this theory about how to change education systems will help us at this very difficult time for humanity do what is necessary but extremely difficult to do, which is to help students build the capacities that they will need to collaborate with one another, with solidarity and with compassion, for the sake of building a world that is more inclusive and more sustainable. A world where every one of us understands deeply this idea that was first expressed 20 centuries ago by Terence, and it is that to be human is to live so that nothing human is foreign to us. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
네. 교수님
Yes, thank you very much. So because of COVID-19, we are facing a dire crisis. And I believe that we need to use ICT to carry out remote education and actually change our paradigm and bring about a renaissance for humanity. And so I think the professor has given us a wonderful talk, goading us to think about these very important topics. Thank you.
Let's move on to the next presentation, which will be provided by team leader Beom Ko from EBS. He's going to talk about new challenges of EBS in the Untact Era. I'd like to make some housekeeping announcements. As you may understand, EBS, the Korean Education Broadcasting System, is a public corporation that provides various kinds of educational content using their TV channel, radio channel, as well as on the internet. So this EBS services have been loved by everyone in Korea for more than 30 years. And this is a very unique content provider that provides useful educational materials. And the presenter, Mr. Beom Ko, used to work at the Korea Education Research Information Service, but has moved to EBS, and he's leading a team that is in charge of planning and doing research and making development for the future of education. He's the leader of software education team. Let's invite Mr. Ko for his presentation.
안녕하십니까.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Beom Ko, who's working at EBS in the Computational Thinking Education team.
고범석입니다.
So once again, my name is Beom Ko. According to the Ministry of Education, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as of September 4th, about 39% of the schools in Korea have been closed, and they're offering remote education currently. As a result, EBS has been providing support for remote learning. So since August 31st, EBS has been broadcasting various educational content for elementary school students all the way to the middle school students. So for 9 grades in all, we provide classroom contents and learning contents using our platforms to provide support. Now we're living in an unprecedented time, and EBS is dedicated to providing all the necessary support. In my presentation, I'm going to discuss what we need to do to respond to the current educational crisis and what EBS can do to overcome these new challenges in the era of non-contact or uncontact era. This is the content of my presentation. First, I will discuss the status of EBS, and secondly, I will share with you EBS response to the educational crisis during the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, I'd like to offer you an analysis of the key success factors for EBS, and then I will conclude with some implications. This is the status of EBS. EBS is a special purpose broadcasting system. It is a public corporation. There are many public educational stations in countries, and some countries have some department of education within their broadcasting services, but we have a dedicated broadcasting system for education. We celebrated the 20th anniversary of EBS, but it goes all the way back to the 1950s. During the Korean War, especially in 1951, in Busan, people set up temporary tents and institutions. And at that time, we were supplied with 500 units of radios from the US to provide educational content using radio. There were many refugees in Busan, and children were able to receive education in these temporary institutions during the war. And it was very interesting that radio was used to offer education for children. In the beginning, EBS was a part of KBS, Korea Broadcasting System. And in the 1990s, it became a government-supported organization utilizing radio, TV, and satellite services. And then in 2000, it became an independent public organization that not only covers school learning, but also a lifelong learning content using multimedia and multi-platforms. This is the vision of EBS. We support school education, and we offer lifelong education opportunities for Korean people, and we promote democratic educational development. And EBS wants to be a global education media group in the world. In 1974, the radio school education started, and then we expanded our roles and contributions by making expansions to TV broadcasting and all the way to the online broadcasting and satellite broadcasting. We provide education in English, and we have math service. And most recently, we opened the EBS Software Education online platform and EBS Online Class. So you can see the history of EBS making innovation to support education. Currently, we have terrestrial channel services as well as satellite channel services. EBS 1 and EBS 1 is for lifelong learning, and EBS 2 is for creative education. So you can see that there are differentiations among these different channels under the umbrella of EBS. And we offer tailored content services in this time of crisis thanks to this diversification and specialization. Since 2000, we have been offering interactive educational services. In 2004, for the first time in the world, EBSI online service was launched, which was the opening of online learning era. And we not only offer online and broadcasting services, we have EBS Math, EBS ESOP, and EBS Lang. So these are specialized services where people can use online learning services to enhance their learning experiences. And we have been accumulating experiences in this regard. The advantage of EBS is the capability of producing high-quality content. As you can see, we have been awarded in many different occasions for excellence in the content quality. The excellent quality of EBS has been competitive, it's been recognized, and it's been invited by NHK and France TV and the Discovery Channel, Smithsonian Channel, and many private and public channels have been importing our content. And recently, thanks to our expertise, we've been able to participate in international co-production, and our content capabilities have been expanded globally. And as an educational channel, we have been exporting our programs and expertise to other countries, including Colombia, Chile, and Vietnam. In this difficult period of COVID-19 pandemic, EBS has been dealing with these challenges thanks to its accumulated experiences and expertise. Now we're going through COVID-19 pandemic, and how has EBS been able to support school education using its expertise and capabilities? First of all, during COVID-19 pandemic, this is what EBS has been doing. As you can see very detailed, you can see the urgency and the swift action taken by EBS to support school education to prevent disruption. On February 21st of 2020, we formed an emergency response team, and upon the request from the Ministry of Education on February 25th, EBS initiated the system of establishing online classes in order to minimize disruption in school education. These online classes have class management services inside, and they are based on eSoft platform. And this online classes support elementary, middle, and high school classes. And this was officially launched on March 2nd this year. This was built based on eSoft platform, but in just 5 days, we were able to offer specialized and very specific class management services for all schools in Korea. And more than 150,000 people were able to use them at the same time. And then we expanded that to allow more than 1.5 million students signing on to these services simultaneously. So this was a very challenging process. On March 30th, the Ministry of Education decided to open schools in a consecutive manner, and the EBS services was able to minimize disruption because some classes had to be conducted remotely while other classes will be conducted in person. And in response to this unprecedented situation, EBS online learning was launched. And the key purpose of providing this service was to ensure high quality of education for all. So the EBS online classes were expanded for the third time so that more than 3 million students can use the services at the same time in order to guarantee smooth access to these contents. In particular, kindergarten and primary school students may not have IT skills. So starting from April 13th, we began to broadcast kindergarten education materials on TV so that they can easily access education and learning. So in this process, you can see that EBS not only offers online services but also utilizes many existing platforms, including the TV channels, so that users can diversify their access channels. And we were able to offer educational content depending on users' IT skills and computing capabilities. So by offering diversified channels and levels, we were able to support education for elementary, middle, and high school students. Let me go into more detail about what we've been doing. In 2019, eSoft was opened for education, and this is a specialized education software platform that has class management functions in them. But the eSoft class would only allow 1,500 people that are using the service at the same time. But we've decided we had to expand this to allow more real-time access. So EBS Online Classroom was expanded to allow more than 32.5 million users using this online classroom smoothly. So additional development had to be made. As you can see on the screen, from March 2nd to June 7th, about 97% of the schools in Korea and more than 32.5 million students were able to participate in online classrooms, and more than 565 million contents were created and uploaded. Initially, 1.5 million concurrent users were supported. So initially it was 150,000 concurrent users, but we expanded that to more than 3 million concurrent users by using the cloud services. And this is the standard model that we designed. And then 100 clones of this basic design was duplicated to allow 3 million concurrent users. And to increase efficiency, we considered allocation of IT computing resources to school districts and cities and towns and provinces. And we did data traffic analysis to make sure that stable services are provided while more than 3 million people are using the services concurrently. The EBS online learning platform traffic data is shown on the service. We have traffic data. As for after the first phase, there was expansion in phase-by-phase method, and you can see the number of students using these services. On June 11th, per hour, more than 1.8 million students use the services concurrently, and the maximum number of CDN traffic per minute was 994 Gbps. To offer support for online classes, we were able to provide more than 539,000 episodes that we've been accumulating so far. And these educational contents were able to support teachers in providing education for their children. And so once again, we supported the start of the semester in a remote way. And at the same time, we offer real-time online lectures and classes to minimize chaos and disruption in school education while we provide remote learning. For kindergarten and first graders and second graders, they would use the EBS TV channels. And starting from grade 3 all the way to grade 12, the EBS platform is utilized, but also Naver TV, Kakao TV, and YouTube and other distribution channels were utilized so that they could consume content in any way they want. As for the live broadcasting for grades by using 12 EBS studios, we actually serve the function of providing basic education along with the curriculum of schools. So these lecture contents were designed in line with the curriculum. More than 150 people were put into this production initiative. So these 12 channels for live broadcasting were possible. And to make this happen, we got support from 3 IPTV platform providers as well as many other sponsors that have provided their expertise and support. As you can see on the slide, in the studio, there was live broadcasting. To do so, you not only need a teacher, but also you need an audio engineer, production director, and many other staff members. And each morning, there was this team of people who were dedicated to producing live broadcasting simultaneously for each grade. With the remote school opening, EBS was able to successfully support school education. What were the key success factors? First of all, in this unprecedented pandemic situation where schools could not open physically, what it took to make this a success was cooperation. The Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Science and ICT, and the Korea Communications Commission were collaborated in putting up with policies and budget and other support. So thanks to policy coordination among these organizations, we were able to take action immediately. And technology was supported successfully. We have Microsoft, Ubion, SK Broadband, as well as LG CNS and Bespin Global. These IT providers were able to support in our initiative because they have Edtech expertise. Without their support, this success would not have been possible. And content delivery was also a very important aspect. The 3 IPTV providers as well as cable TV channels provided support. And this was a very successful cooperative model. And thanks to this multi-aspect or multi-dimensional collaboration, we were able to support concurrent access of elementary, middle, and high school students to the EBS services. And here I may be bragging a little bit, but I like to say that EBS has been accumulating its experiences and capabilities, and its diverse platforms and contents have been key success factor. EBS has been planning and has expertise in planning and contents production, textbook development, transmission, and internet services. So already EBS has have been accumulating a lot of experiences that allowed us to respond to the crisis situation successfully. And this, I believe, is another key success factor for remote learning. The final key success factor was humanware or human resources. We were faced with unprecedented crisis. There was sacrifice from the teachers. When the March to May, for 3 months, there was some issues that we had to do. There was some troubleshooting that we had to do. And there were many demands coming from schools. But then there were school leaders and teachers who were dedicated to make this happen. And finally, I want to share with you some implications. The pandemic is not over yet. We're still going through the COVID-19 pandemic, but we have to think about implications for post-pandemic era. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we experienced an unprecedented crisis situation. We're still going through it, and this is not going to be a temporary situation, but this could be a part of our reality. So just as we prepare for natural disasters like typhoons and earthquakes, we have to be prepared for educational crisis. Secondly, we have to prepare our teachers for the non-contact and blended learning situation. Already since early 2000s, schools have been connected online and cyber e-learning system has been offered already. But in recent months, we would realize that teachers should be prepared even more. This COVID-19 pandemic was an opportunity to assess whether teachers are ready for blended learning and remote learning. We have to upskill our teachers. Number 3, we need to utilize appropriate technology rather than advanced technology. State-of-the-art technology may not guarantee successful education because we need a good match between technology and teachers' capabilities. When we adopt appropriate technology, this is going to help teachers improve their teaching. And number 4, we need a sustainable cooperation system among the government, the public sector, the private sector, and many other stakeholders. we learned an important lesson that collaboration and cooperation is crucial in dealing with the crisis. The public sector and the private sector, they have their own advantages and skills, and we need to work together. And finally, we need national investment in Edtech industry. In the 2000s, Korea was proud of its advanced IT network, but now we may be lagging behind in terms of smart devices and mobile learning. We were able to quickly respond to COVID-19 crisis, but we have a long way to go. So based on the current experiences, we need to make an investment in the edtech industry so that we can secure underlying technology for blended learning and remote learning. And this type of investment will help the Korean industry export its solutions as well. In the educational disaster situation, we had to open school remotely. And this was something that we never imagined or experienced before. And it was an opportunity to reflect on our education. And EBS has been supporting remote learning by offering live broadcasting as well as a huge body of educational content using EdTech solutions. And we've been serving as a bridge between different stakeholders. I'd like to once again express my gratitude to all the teachers who are out there in working with us. And I hope that our discussions will be a foundation for further development in the future. I'd like to thank you for your attention. EBS is going to continue to work hard to make our education happy and make our students happy. And we will continue to be dedicated to being with our people in the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 situation. Thank you.
네, 팀장님 강연 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We were able to see that EBS has been supporting school education using its capabilities and how successful it has been. So this was a wonderful presentation. We have huge expectations from EBS going forward.
코리아 포럼 이제 트랙
So we have now heard two presentations, and we have one presenter remaining for Track-B1. So she is a teacher. Her name is Yoon-kyung Ko. And she will talk to us about blended learning using digital textbooks. So let me introduce her to you. She is a lecturer at EBS and a leader in Gyeonggi Innovation Education under the Gyeonggi-do Office of Education, normalizing public education and school innovation and future education. She is devoted to teacher training and practical educational activities on the role of teachers as coaching rather than teaching. Good morning. Through this forum, I'm saying hello to all of you, so it is an honor and I'm happy to be here. I would like to talk about blended learning using digital textbooks for student activity-oriented classes. So currently, I teach social studies at Hangaram Middle School in Paju. Now on this slide, you can see the keywords that I will be covering during my talk today. So I believe it was the World Economic Forum in 2016, and at that time there was a new term that was used, a term which is very familiar to us now. Of course, the term is the fourth industrial revolution. Now, as you know, we're talking about AI and robots and IoT and big data. And through such technology, I believe that the different barriers and boundaries within our society are coming down, and we are seeing convergence and super connections in our society. And I think the same changes will be hitting the education scene as well. And as a teacher in the education scene, I have expectations about the future education, and of course I do have worries and concerns about what is to come. And so amid such situation, well, what will happen to schools in the near future? Of course, we will have VR and AR used more and more, and the school will change as a time and place for learning. And we will be transcending space and time. And in 2018, we had a new curriculum that was revised in 2015. And if you look at this new curriculum, we are focusing on the students. So we're going towards a student-centric curriculum. And by having such classes and lessons, we want to promote agency and their own autonomous capabilities, and we want school to be an enjoyable experience for our students. So let me go into some more details. Now, the goal or the objective of the 2015 revised curriculum, well, we want to move away from cramming our students with a lot of knowledge and information. We have key competencies that are required in the future. For example, agency and dealing and processing with data and information and so forth. And of course, you will not be doing this alone. You need to collaborate with your peers, and you will need to communicate. So you need capabilities to do this. And also, you need to have the ability to empathize with others. So there are some psychological capabilities as well. And so these are some key information in the revised curricula. Now, amid such changes in the schools and also in our society, well, I'm a teacher, so actually my workplace is the school. So I thought of alternative options to our current education, and what I came up with is the digital textworks. And if you look at this just from a functional perspective, of course we went through trial and error. However, we need to look at this from another perspective. Are we able to have student-centric education and learning as a result of utilizing these digital textbooks? Perhaps we can make better use of these digital textbooks in this time and era. And such studies have been carried out among teachers. And of course, we were able to continue such studies and efforts during the pandemic. And so actually doing the research and experience and application of these theories are actually ongoing at this very moment, and that is what I would like to talk about. First of all, let me explain what digital textbooks are. So usually we are used to paper textbooks. However, with these paper-based textbooks, we will have a e-glossary. And also we add on multimedia material and also AR and VR. Now, AR and VR, that is more recent because we are able to provide new experience to our students through AR and VR. So that will be part of the digital textbook. And the students are able to become immersed in that experience, and actually this heightens their curiosity and interest in the subject. And so there are abundant tools and materials that can be used. And within the digital textbook, there are other functions that enable the students to actually manage their learning. So it can be used for self-learning. And of course, it is not enough to learn the information in the textbook. We have to learn from outside sources. And so KERIS has a website that provides numerous learning materials. And so we can link such material to our digital textbooks. And actually, our students, when they are curious about something, they do a search on YouTube. And so there are learning materials on YouTube that can be utilized not by just the students, but also the teachers as well. So links can be made to YouTube links as well. So the advantage of the digital textbook is that it enables agency of the student. And also we can personalize the teaching for the individual student. Now, having said that, in 2013, we had a pilot project using digital textbooks, and we went through a lot of trial and error. Because if you take a look at the digital textbooks, it looks like a smart device. And so oftentimes we were just pressing down on the numerous function-related buttons on the tablet. And so sometimes actually these digital textbooks added to the confusion in the classroom when the teachers were not well prepared. So sometimes it was just a one-time event. Sometimes they just packed up all the tablets and sent it into storage because it was just undoable. So what can the alternative options be? Now, we are teachers, we are experts in education. So how should we approach the digital textbook? How can we fully utilize this? The conclusion that we reach is that, yes, we should use it for self-directed learning of the students, and the lessons should be understanding-based. And so in my title, you see terms such as activity-oriented classes, and you see the term understanding on my slide. So let me briefly explain this. Simply put, well, when we give a lesson, we often ask the students, did you understand? We ask that a lot, but what is understanding? Let me try to summarize the concept of understanding. So we have facts and we have concepts. And we have to link and interpret how the facts are linked to the concepts. And making that link, understanding that relationship is understanding. And to have full understanding of the student, scholars say that we need 3 steps. First is experience. Second is expression. Third is explanation. So let me go into some more details about this. So let's say there is something that we need to understand, and so that will be the teaching material in a class or in a lesson. So what is experience? This means activity, and this experience has to be real experience. It has to be hands-on for the student. So that is what I mean by activity. So it has to be hands-on. You have to feel it with your hands, your feet, your body, and so forth, and that will lead to ultimately experience. So that's the first step, experience. And then the outcome of the experience in step 2 has to be expressed by the student. So here you will be writing down something, expressing your thoughts, making a record of what you experienced in your own words. And you can express it in words, or you can draw a picture. It could be a simple diagram, for example. Some people say this: the level of understanding is proportional to the diversity of expression. Next, step 3, which is explaining what you learned and experienced. So there is something that you understood, and you express this, and then you actually have to explain this through your actions. Let's think about what explaining is. You have thoughts in your heads, and you have to be able to think of this in context. So what I'm trying to say is this: when we have lessons using the digital textbooks, and when we are trying to carry out activity-oriented classes, or when we want the lesson to be understanding-based, well, if this is possible, then the students will be more active and participate more. And the teachers will be able to give more time for the students to engage in dialogue and discussion. So I talked about the process of understanding and the activities. So how can we contain this? That is why I want to go over this slide, which is titled Worksheet. Now, I often emphasize the importance of worksheets, and the worksheet is not a teaching material for the teacher. And during class, we provide guidebooks to the students. And the worksheet is not same to these sheets that we hand out during class. So this is actually a learning guide or a guidebook. And so we have academic knowledge in the textbooks, and the students will have to express what they learned from the textbook. It has to be an output. And so we refer to that as the worksheet. And during collaborative learning, well, we can use the worksheet in order to make sure that the student has learned the information and the content. Also, the worksheet can be used as an evidence of communication between the student with his or her peers and also with the teacher. Now, as for this worksheet, it can be handed out to the students in a form of a single sheet of paper. But as I said, the digital textbook is a self-directed learning. So the worksheets can be made in a form of a activity book, and handing this out at the beginning of the semester is the best way to go, I believe. Next, I would like to talk about how to make this worksheet. I will be going over some keywords. Now, we have the curriculum, and based on that, we come up with learning objectives for each of the lessons that we give. And with this learning objective, we give a lot of thought as to how we're going to give this lesson. So we try to design our lesson. For example, the learning objective is the student can explain how the volcanic area has been formed. So we need to participate the students so they will learn this information, and we give a lot of thought as to how to design this lesson. Now, in my case, if you look at inside the digital textbook, we have an AR contents that shows how the volcanoes were formed in Jeju Island. And within the worksheet, well, you open up the digital textbook to page such and such, and then you click on the icon that will show you the AR for the volcanic formations in Jeju Island. And that will refer to the observation and recording that is on this slide. Now, the students going through many rounds of observation and recording will finally learn how the volcanoes are formed. He or she will have his or her own interpretation of how the volcanoes are formed, and in the end, he or she will be able to write statements on how the volcanoes are formed or draw pictures, for example. And that will make that lesson complete. And so, let's say you created this worksheet and went into your classroom. You began your lesson. So this is now at the scene. And what kind of teaching methods do you need to employ in order to have success in the class? Well, I think there are 4 things. First is reading by action. Now, in class, in step 1, by using the digital textbooks, we start by reading by action. So the teacher points out a certain page and instructs the children, the students, to read by action. And so the students will use the underline function or highlighting function. And by using this function, the students will read by action, and they will highlight the important keywords. And then going back to the worksheet, in relation to what the student has read, the students will answer in their own words the questions that the teacher has posed in the worksheets. And so the rules of engagement are pre-explained to the students. So when the teacher says read by action, the students know what to do. Now, during this time, the students really need to study hard. They really need to think hard and concentrate. And during this time, I refrain from interrupting the students or giving too many instructions. I basically say for the next 5 minutes, we will read by action. And then I tell them when the time remaining is 2 minutes, for example. So after step 1, read by action, we have pair activity. So you have a partner and you will be sharing the results of step number 1. And here you need more detailed rules for giving this lesson. So for example, students are in pairs, so you need to sit down at a 45 degrees angle. So the instructions are very detailed. The person talking will explain his worksheet, and this worksheet will not be in front of him, but it should be in front of the partner. And the person who explains will point with his fingers where he is explaining. And as for the listening student, this person needs to practice responding. And there are many rules, detailed rules here as well. So responding by saying, yes, I understand. So you need to show that you're listening. You need to respond. Now, for the first 2-3 weeks in the beginning, we have to practice this. And sometimes the students kind of overdo it. But anyhow, we have very detailed rules about how we do this pair activity. And actually, the students become very involved and students learn how to listen and how to talk. And actually, step 2 is a step that prepares the students for step 3. Now, if we think in terms of education, well, actually the presenters are actually in a panic state and the students become extremely nervous. However, during step number 2, you actually explain this to your partner, so you're able to organize your thoughts and you're able to practice the presentation. And so in step 3, this is the sharing step. And during this step, the teacher will have to make a lot of verbal comments. And so in step number 3, the teacher has to ask for a volunteer who will share with the whole class. And I made my students promise that everyone will raise their hand when I ask for a volunteer. And so we want to create a very safe environment for the student so the student can freely present his or her thoughts. Now at this time, the teacher will listen to what the students are saying. If there are any misinformation, that this will be corrected. Now in middle school and high school, the class time is about 45 minutes. So I will be talking maybe for about 15 minutes and the rest is left to the students. So what am I doing in the remaining 30 minutes? Well, that has to do with the 4th skill. So I think my slides have moved forward. Yes, can I get my slides back? Okay, I will work my slides myself. Okay, so step 4, which is monitoring. So if you look at the picture on the bottom, you see this red line. Now students are sitting in groups, and the red line, this is the movement of the teacher. And so this is what I am doing. Students are doing reading by action and doing the pair activity. So I am the facilitator and I tell them how much time is remaining. But in the remaining time, I move by all the students. And so maybe I make my students a little bit nervous so they will concentrate on what they need to be doing. And so I think the role of the teacher has to be different now. So good teachers do not teach. We often say this. Now, in the past, the teacher played a vital role in teaching, and the teacher had a lot of knowledge, and this knowledge was transferred to the students. However, science and technology is much developed, and now we have Edtech. And so, actually, the main player in education is not the teacher, but the students. So the education environment has changed, and now we have moved towards self-directed learning. So the role of the teacher has to be different now. We now need to be experts in education, and so we need to design the lesson, and we should be coaching and not teaching. And so we are playing the role of assistant. That is what I'm actually doing, and I think that is the right direction. And so I have talked about the many changes that we are experiencing, and I talked about the benefits of the digital textbooks. It enables self-directed learning. And in the future, communication skills will be all the more important, and we need to enable our students to collaborate with one another. Now, in response to COVID-19, we have run into some problems because our students are now at home. So they are working hard on thinking and trying to learn by themselves. However, what about communication? We are in the Untact Era, and by using Edtech technology, perhaps we should engage in two-way communication, bilateral communication. And perhaps we cannot get video connection, but at least we can utilize chat rooms. And I am not sure whether I'm the right person to be sitting here, because I know there are people who are much better knowledgeable and who are far better experts than myself. And I engaged in a workshop that has to do with video conferencing systems and video class systems. And I found that most teachers were using websites to give lessons, and a few teachers were just using websites to do online shopping. Now, as a user, as a teacher that uses digital textbooks, I would like to introduce some tools that can be used. So these are tools for bilateral communication. Now, this site is called Widrang, and digital textbooks enable self-directed learning. However, with this platform, it is a social network service, but it is at a class level or subject level. So it enables communication, and there are separate spaces where group activity is possible, and also there could be assessments made by the teachers, and the feedback can be given. And there are many tools here that enable that emphasize the learning process. This is the second site, and by using this site, it is very easy to share the learning contents that you have. Now, the title here is Padlet, which is another word for wall. So in the past, in a real classroom, we will post up a large sheet of paper and engage in communication. And this will be an online version of that bulletin board on the wall. And the third tool is something I'm sure that is used by a lot of teachers. It is called the Google Classroom, provided by Google. And these are educational tools, and all these educational tools are provided free of charge. And this is used for effective collaboration between teachers and students. And so you can work on documents, you can have video conferencing, and many teachers are taking advantage of this tool, the Google Classroom. And of course, we have Zoom, which enables video communications. And you can also share your material, your slides, and also you can open up small group rooms and have the students engage in small group activities. So that was my last slide, and I would like to end with a quotation by John Dewey. We do not learn from experience, we actually learn from reflecting on experience. So I have used the digital textbooks over the years, and of course I experienced many difficulties, but I worked with other teachers, and within the Gyeonggi Office of Education, we have a club that tries to find more applications for digital textbooks. So yes, there are many colleagues that I really want to thank for all their efforts. And also I want to thank the participants who are connected online. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you will be able to overcome the pandemic. Thank you. Yes, thank you. That was Ms. Yoon Kyung-ko, and that was the last presentation for Track-B1. So the pandemic is rather becoming a prolonged situation, and we were coming up with new models for teaching and learning. And so, yes, we were able to think about the role of teachers during this time. So we should be coaching, not just teaching. So thank you, Ms. Go, for that very meaningful presentation.
많은 분들이 또
So I'm sure the participants were able to relate to the three presentations. Let's move on to the Q&A session. As for Professor REIMERS, we sent him a couple questions in advance.
수업을 시작할
Since the transition to distance learning, Korea has already experienced a significant gap in student academic achievement. Particularly, the underprivileged students are hard hit. So how can we minimize this learning gap?
That you have sent me is what to do with the existing and perhaps growing gaps in academic achievement. As I mentioned in my previous answer, because students have different supports at home, it is to be expected that we're going to see gaps in the opportunities that students have to learn, and as a result of that, in what they actually learn. And those gaps should be an absolute priority. Addressing those gaps should be an absolute priority for ministries of education and for education leaders. For example, in the United States, some families who have the means to do so have hired private tutors. They could be a teacher, could be a recent teacher graduate, they could be a retired teacher, to work with their children, or perhaps with the children of 2 or 3 families, providing them extra support, not to substitute the school, but to complement what the school is doing, making sure that students are keeping up with their school work, creating additional opportunities for social development, for emotional development, to attend to the well-being of the students. Not every family can afford such private tutors. And as a result of that, we do have existing gaps that are happening. So what to do with that? A very foolish way to respond to that would be to say we're going to ban tutoring. We're going to make it impossible for the families who want to do that for their kids to do so because we want everybody to be equally miserable. That would not be very smart. First of all, it probably couldn't be enforced. But also, why not depend on a resource provided by families when they can do that to help some children, so that the attention of the state, of the government, can focus on the resources on the children who need that attention the most. So I'll give you 2 examples of what doing that kind of compensatory effort could mean as a way to address those gaps in achievement. In the state of Massachusetts, where I live and I work, our governor authorized through an executive decree that our early childhood centers could become study places for students in elementary and I believe secondary school who need a place to study. And there are some students whose parents have to work and who really don't have an adequate place to study at home. They're going to be alone or may not have internet. So these daycare centers, which are smaller settings, they have, but which are safe places, and they have adults that have been screened to provide a safe environment for children, normally for younger children, have now been authorized to offer a service as a place of study where students will receive some support. Is this a perfect solution? Of course not. Those early childhood providers don't have the training or the skills to provide the academic support that students may need in elementary school or secondary school. But they can provide emotional support, they can provide an adequate place where kids can be with other kids, and they can provide more than might be the alternative for these kids if they go to an empty home or they go to a home where there are other adults and they're going to be distracted and not being able to study. So this is one example of how thinking outside the box can basically repurpose an existing resource, in this case a daycare center, to serve a need of the moment, the need of a safe place for children to study, under the supervision of a caring adult who at least is not going to harm the kids and who maybe has some skills to attend to the well-being of the child. Second example of innovative thinking would be to engage university students in a form of social volunteering, of public service, serving as tutors remotely or perhaps face-to-face to provide for the children whose families cannot afford private tutors such a service. In fact, this pandemic is a phenomenal opportunity for universities to demonstrate how valuable they can be to society at a time of great need, helping partner with elementary and secondary schools in helping to create some solutions. I am at the moment conducting a large global study looking at how 22 universities around the world are partnering with elementary and secondary schools, helping to design, enrich the curriculum, helping to provide support to teachers, and supporting students and their families in other ways. So these are examples of how to address these gaps in academic achievement, which absolutely should concern us greatly.
네, 발표에 대한 질문에 대한
Thank you very much for his answer to this question. Next, I'm going to have a Q&A session with participating presenters. We received so many questions about these presentations, but due to time limit, I'm going to ask each presenter one question. There are other questions that were submitted in advance. We're going to deliver them to the presenters that will be answered later in writing and posted on the website. Let's move on to the first question to Mr. Beom from EBS. EBS has been a leader in promoting K-education and K-Edtech. While the schools opened remotely, there were some technical difficulties and other issues that you had to deal with, and I'm sure there were many challenges in the beginning. So in offering these remote education services, what were the key challenges and how were you able to overcome them? With the online start of the school year, this was a very new experience. It was unprecedented. I did some research, and when I took a look at the records of concurrent access to the images, there were about 1 million or 1.5 million people accessing the online material at the same time. That was the record in the past. But right now, we have more than 2.6 million students in elementary, middle, and high school students. So given the situation and the student population, we had to make sure that concurrent access to the services would be guaranteed because it was a huge technological challenge. And we didn't have much time to prepare. As I mentioned in my presentation, we had to offer online classes in just 5 days. So it was a huge technical challenge. So that was number one challenge. And as for the second challenge, in a disastrous situation in school education, we didn't really have a system in place that could support online opening of the schools. So we had to convert or modify some of the existing services, which was not easy. First of all, we were not 100% sure what needs would be there from the schools and to what level services had to be provided. So it was not easy. And then secondly, we had to come up with some development to satisfy the needs. But we didn't have time to start from scratch. So we had to modify the existing solutions, which was quite challenging. And this shows that this type of pandemic can happen again in the future. And we have to start preparations now so that we can be better prepared for a next crisis.
감사합니다.
Thank you. So the pandemic will be recurring, so that's quite sad, but so true. And so I think you had many difficulties because you did not have much time to fully prepare for the online classes. So I'm sure that we will be overcoming the shortcomings that we are experiencing, and I think EBS will be in the lead. Next, I have a question for Ms. Ko. Now, during your presentation, you talked about being student-centered and having the students participate. Now, when we carried out remote classes, how actively did the students participate? Because the students are at home, so many people wonder whether the students are really concentrating in the lesson while at home. And how can we promote agency of the student? Well, during offline, so when I see the students at school, well, as I said during my talk, I can actually see the students actually make body movements and they will engage in physical activity and they will know that they are the main players of the class. However, it was quite difficult during remote classes. It was difficult to actually gather the students together because students are going through puberty. They don't want to show their faces online, for example. And also, you have to set a specific time and gather together because when you're at school, you're there and we have the school bell ringing telling you to sit down and get ready for class. But that is not necessarily so when the students are at home. So actually, I engaged the help of the students. So I had students bring in the members of their small group, for example. And when we have small group discussions, we provide separate spaces or chat rooms where they can engage in discussions. And that was helpful as well. I saw that my colleagues were using this method very effectively. And also, some students are learning theater and acting, and that's actually more difficult to do online, but it is doable. And teachers, we are all coming up with ways to go around the difficulties. Yes, I think there's a lot of hardship for the teachers. So to make that shift from teaching to coaching, I think that's the trend, and we need to have the students lead the lessons, and so I think we have to give more thought to this. Thank you. It is impressive that you said we need to build back better. Lately, the Ministry of Education of Korea has announced that it will continue with a blended learning option, a mixture of online and offline classes, even after the pandemic. However, educators are worried whether we are quite ready for this. I would like to ask you, maybe you could give us some advice on what the Ministry of Education and the public education system can do to prepare.
I've been asked a last question around my comment on the need to build back better. How to build back better in education? What advice would I have for a Ministry of Education? Look, I don't deny in any way the pain and the suffering that this pandemic has created. Millions of people who have been infected, almost 1 million people who have lost their lives. The economic impact that this pandemic has had on nations, on communities, on firms, and on individuals is unbelievable, and it's not over. and that economic pain will continue for some time. We have never seen a time in recent history where all the economic engines were shut down around the world at the same time. So this is a calamity. But the question is, what do we do in response to that calamity? I can imagine three possible responses. One is we say the sky is falling, let's hide under the table, let's hide under the bed, and wait until the storm is over. Now that wouldn't be very helpful for the children who are going to be most severely impacted. In fact, that could only make a bad situation worse. The second possible response is to say this is all too difficult. The education system didn't create this problem, it cannot solve this problem. Let's close down the schools and wait until this is over, as some countries have done. This would be a disaster. This would create the biggest loss in learning opportunity in a century around the world. It would really have incalculable consequences and cause a lot of damage to children for the rest of their lives and to their families. Third possible response would be to say, none of us wish for a pandemic, but let's face it, this pandemic arrived in a context in which the education system was not perfect. In fact, for many children, the education system was rather toxic. Children were being bullied in those schools. They were never really being engaged in a way that challenged them, that helped them learn skills, that helped them develop any sense of purpose. So let's try to address those issues as we solve the problem of the pandemic, not only to solve them for the moment, but to solve them for after the moment. Let's actually build a renaissance. And to do that, the most important thing is to think clearly about what are the learning goals that we should be focused on, and what are the pedagogies that can help us achieve those goals, and obsess a little bit less with covering content. I hear so many educators and read so many reports of children who are sitting in front of their computers with their teachers lecturing on Zoom for 4, 5, 6 hours. This is going to produce a lost generation. Do you imagine what it would do to a child to see their education reduced to watching videos on television for 6 hours a day? Who's going to want to learn after this? This is the treatment one would decide if we wanted to turn children off against learning and kill the love of learning. But there are many ways in which asynchronous instruction can be made effective. For example, I'm teaching a course on education policy, a course I normally teach at Harvard, face-to-face with my students meeting in classrooms, and when we meet together for several hours a week, we combine lecturing, discussion, case studies, small group activities. I obviously cannot do that now that we cannot meet because Harvard has decided to teach online for the fall semester, and in the case of the Graduate School of Education, for the entire academic year. So this is an enormous opportunity for innovation. So what I have done is I have built a flipped classroom. I have videotaped some of the lecturing. My students can watch these before they come to class. I have created in the course management platform many different tools that help my students engage with each other and with the content without my activity. So for example, I use a social media platform that makes it possible for students to generate conversations and engage with others in conversations, which is much more dynamic than the typical asynchronous discussion, which is very linear and very scripted by teachers. This is a lot more organic, much more led by students. The name of the platform is Yellow Dig. But I also use a platform that engages students in reading the same text and in all discussing, essentially editing the text. It's like they were reading the text together and they were all thinking aloud together and had access to everybody's thought. And all of that happens before they come to a live discussion with me. And when they meet with me for an hour and a half every week, I do very little talking. Instead, I plan those sessions asking myself, what are my learning goals for the session? And what activities do I need to plan for my students to engage in so they learn these things that I'm hoping for them? And then they meet with a teaching fellow, an advanced graduate student, and that live session, similarly, is very much student-centered. Now, why did I decide to do those things? Because over the summer, the university provided me and many of my colleagues many opportunities to learn state-of-the-art information on online learning. How is it that online and asynchronous education can be most instructive? We should be providing similar opportunities to every teacher. We should be providing them not just with the technology, the course management platforms, the access to Zoom, but with the knowledge of how to best support learning for our students. And to a great extent, that's an extension of what good teachers were always doing, because it begins asking, what is it that I want my student to learn? And how am I going to be able to get each of my students to best learn that? Using the tools I have, which in a face-to-face environment are some tools, in an asynchronous environment there are others. Now, in fairness, there are some aspects of the learning and teaching experience where asynchronous is better than face-to-face. And I'm hoping that one of the silver linings of this pandemic is going to be that we will all become a lot better at developing blended modalities of learning. So that's what I mean by the need and the opportunity to build back better. To a great extent, I think events like this conference that invite people to listen to one another, to share ideas, to share questions, that build professional communities, that build trust, are what we need. We're going to need a lot of that throughout the pandemic in order to build a renaissance. I use this metaphor of building a renaissance thinking about the pandemic of the 14th century in Italy, which in 2 years wiped out 1/3 of the entire population of Italy. Now, that pandemic was terrible. The physical damage that it caused in the many lives that it took, 1/3 of the population, the economic damage, social damage. But the pandemic also unleashed a process of social innovation that eventually brought about the Renaissance. And the pathway through which it unleashed that process is that in the small city of Florence, the political leaders, under the leadership of Lorenzo de' Medici, from one of the very influential families in the city, decided that they were going to do something different to what every other city was doing. Whereas most cities were actually spending a lot of the monies that they had on their taxes on armies and fighting one another, they decided to invest in the arts and in the sciences. And they invited and supported people like Leonardo da Vinci, people like Michelangelo, people like Raphael, like Donatello, like Machiavello. And the convergence of all those different intellects in the small city of Florence produced an awakeness, unleashed a creativity that eventually brought about the Renaissance. And some people have called that the Medici effect, that synergy that results from bringing people from different perspectives together, as you are doing in this conference. So I think we're going to need education leadership that is capable of unleashing a lot of Medici effects around the world as we face the pandemic. And this is leadership that is going to invite collaboration. It's a leadership that is humble. It's a leadership that can listen. It's a leadership that can make feel every stakeholder that they belong and they have something to contribute. In contrast, the leadership that is arrogant, the leadership that uses a top-down command and control approach, is going to set some education systems back. It will dampen the capacity to innovate. It will prevent innovation. And in those systems, it's quite possible that the educational pain caused by this pandemic will be a lot worse. That's why I wrote this book, Educating Students to Improve the World. It is a vision of the kind of systemic transformation that I think can help an education system educate global citizens. The need to educate global citizens precedes the pandemic. There is a very distinguished citizen of South Korea, Ban Ki-moon, who was a true champion, a true global champion for the idea of global citizenship. And I think that idea has never been more necessary. So let's seize the moment. That's what I have tried to do in my remarks, in addressing these questions and in my lecture, to convey to you that this is a time in which we can create the opportunities for every student to understand the deep meaning of that idea of Terence, that to be fully human, nothing human should be foreign to us. And to do that, absolutely, we're going to have to invest in teacher professional development. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are many examples, there are many studies on what works in teacher professional development. This book, Empowering Teachers to Build a Better World, is an analysis of 6 large-scale programs of teacher education that actually have the goal of helping teachers develop the breadth of skills that they need to educate the whole child. This is the time for such programs. So I thank you. I thank you for inviting me to this virtual city of Florence, in which you're constructing the Medici effect that we need to make the most out of this global calamity and to build a renaissance in which we educate all of our students with the skills that they will need to become architects of their own lives and contributing members of the many communities of which they are a part. Thank you very much.
Next question. Some people say that teachers should fill the gap in student academic achievement by providing personalized education for students who underperform. The effective distance learning, should we try to expand the range of teaching in addition to improving the expertise and skills of teachers? Is this the responsibility of public education to provide personalized education for diverse groups of students?
Is on the role of personalized education, and in particular, whether there should be personalized efforts to educate students who underperform. And the answer is a resounding yes, of course. Good education is always personalized. Children differ. They differ from the very first day they come to school. When a teacher in first grade is trying to set the foundations for literacy, for example, is trying to teach students how to read, some students come to school from homes where they have had the opportunity to have many conversations. And as a result of that, they have an expanded vocabulary. They may even come from homes where their parents have been reading to them since they were little. So they understand the purpose of a book. They understand what it is like to read a story. They even understand that there is a correspondence between meanings and these things that they see in the paper, which they may not yet be able to decipher, to decode. The task of helping that child break the code, learn how to read, is a much easier task than teaching a child who arrived in the first grade of school from a home where no one has really spent much time talking to them, or listening to them, or showing them a book, or reading them. And so the good teacher is going to engage those two students differently, is going to create different opportunities for those students so that at the end of the first grade, they all are in the same place with respect to at least a minimum set of skills, of literacy skills. It is no different with this pandemic. This pandemic has disrupted the way in which public schools can function when students can meet with their teachers in a face-to-face environment. And as a result of that, the task of teaching is absolutely mediated by the home context, by whether that context provides the student a space and the time for study, whether it provides them with an adult who can support them in their studies if they need that, with whether they have the right technology to connect, with whether the students are free of stresses so that they can concentrate in their studies. So students are going to differ. And as a result of that, it's going to be easier for some students to continue to learn during the pandemic than for others. In that context, it is absolutely an imperative of public education systems to make sure that there is a minimum floor, a minimum set of supports that all students have. And that means personalizing for the students who are most vulnerable, most disadvantaged. We do need positive discrimination strategies, compensatory programs and strategies, affirmative action programs that give more time, attention, and resources to those students who have less support at home, given their homes. I will give you an example of what this could mean. A teacher could identify the students who are least engaged and call them in for individualized meetings online, for example, if instruction is happening online, or do extra work with some students remotely, with a small subset of students who seem to be falling behind. In effect, providing additional time and additional instructional resources to those students who need such additional time. I think it is the responsibility of public schools to do that, to provide that kind of personalization. And what that requires on the part of teachers is a system where they can keep track of each and every student, for the teacher in the classroom, for the teacher in the school, so that they can have more focused attention on the students who seem to be falling behind and needing that kind of attention.
Next question. As you have mentioned, learners' agency, such as self-motivation, is becoming more crucial in distance learning. While operating distance learning, there is a phenomenon where students who lack such capacity give up on their studies. How can we foster such agency? Any specific methods?
how to foster student agency. What specific methods can teachers use to do that? So as I mentioned in my lecture, student agency, building intrinsic motivation is not only a very important outcome of education in the 21st century, but it's an essential capacity for students to learn independently. And a very simple way to do that is to connect what students are learning with things they care about. How do we know what students care about? We get to know them. We ask them. In my courses at Harvard, as the semester begins, I ask students to make individual appointments with me. And I spend 20 minutes with them and I ask them, tell me about yourself. What were you doing before you came to Harvard? What are you interested in? What are your goals? This is something that every teacher can do at any level, in different ways, perhaps, than a 20-minute individual appointment. But I think taking the time to meet our students, being curious about our students, getting to know a little bit about their passions, their interests, what excites them, is essential to be able to help them see the connection between what we're trying to teach them and what they care about. And of course, the goal of teaching is to then expand those interests, to help them care about other things, to help them discover, develop an appreciation, a curiosity for things they didn't know existed. So an example of how curriculum can do that is what we did in the World Course, which, as I explained in my lecture, was a curriculum, 350 units, aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, in which in every unit we engage students in active learning, in project-based learning, in collaborative learning with their peers that help them see the connection between what they were doing in school and the world outside of school. So basically, opening the classroom to the outside world is a wonderful way to activate motivation. And in many ways, the pandemic has made this easier because many students are actually learning at home. The connection between the home and the classroom has been strengthened. The home is the classroom. So it's very important for the teachers to integrate the reality of that home, the reality of the circumstance of the kid, of their family, into instruction, and to make that reality part of the material of teaching. A simple way to begin is the curriculum that we presented in 60 simple lessons, very much reflecting the same principles of the World Course in 5 lessons per grade. If you read this book, you will see the methodology of how to go from ambitious goals like the UN Sustainable Development Goals to defining learning outcomes, to defining learning opportunities. And then lastly, this book, Learning to Collaborate for the Global Common Good, presents 7 different curriculum pathways to do the same thing as a way to convey that there isn't a single approach, that there are many different ways to do that. But the bottom line in response to that question is developing student agency is about getting to know the student, getting to know her interests, and helping them see the connection between their interest and what we're trying to teach them, and in the process expand those interests.